Hello, this is Sir David bringing you another guide. I was requested to do a guide on weapon grouping by Ingtech 101 on Steam, and thinking about it, I couldn't do just a guide on weapon grouping without focusing at least half of it on recoil and recoil mitigation, because recoil plays a pivotal role in where you place weapons and how you group them together. To start things off, let's talk about grouping. And weapon grouping is not only where you place your weapons on your M.A.V. in relation to each other, but also how you group those weapons together into each weapon group. Since your M.A.V. can have about 3 to 4 weapon groups made up of 3 to 7 weapons each, this can be a very interesting combinations that you can get. Down below I have a list of different kinds of really general an overview of different kind of things you want to do with weapon grouping and the kind of weapons that are associated with that, such as like precision, where you want to have the maximum amount of damage and the minimum amount of area, such as with snipers and cannons, where you want to have all the shots land on a single part, maybe like their chassis, a weapon cluster, the cockpit, what have you. There's also things like the general weapon grouping, where you want the weapons to be about close to each other, but they don't have to be the tightest thing out there. And that's mostly seen on things like machine guns, assault rifles, shotguns, where you want to hit the M.A.V. with each shot, but it doesn't make that much difference if you can't get all the shots in the same location. And then you have the loose grouping, with things like howitzers and flamethrowers, where even if you don't really hit the M.A.V., it's not that important because of things like the splash damage from howitzers, which sometimes is more important than directly hitting the M.A.V., especially when you're a few thousand meters away and can't see them because you're shooting over a mountain, or with flamethrowers where you're just using the fire as a way to blind the enemy and just to go and do as much damage as possible over their entire M.A.V. instead of concentrating it on just certain parts. And then we have the recoil system, which is most notable in high caliber weapons such as howitzers, snipers, and cannons, along with certain smaller ones like machine guns, where the reload time is so small that it really builds up on the recoil. Thing to go and mention, by the way, is that howitzers have a special recoil mechanic where the recoil does not take effect until a few seconds later. So you could fire all 4 shots and then have the recoil hit you all at once and just knock off your aim after your entire salvo has already left the chamber. Some things that influence recoil is the aim stability on the chassis, the fire delay on the cockpit, the recoil force on your weapons, and where you place the weapons on the M.A.V. These are very important, since where the weapon place is the leading factor to how strong the recoil is. The further away the weapon is from the central connection point, which is the main connection point on the top of the chassis, the stronger the recoil force, along with the recoil force of the weapon, but that is kind of marginal. The second biggest thing to mitigate the recoil is having the appropriate chassis. Chassis like reverse joints, hexes, have very high aim stability compared to ones like hovers and wheels, where if you fire 2 really big guns, your aim's going to be really knocked off on hover chassis, while it's going to be barely knocked off on reverse joints, just because it has such a high aim stability. And then finally, the fire delay on the cockpit, which just means that recoil has less time to move your aim away from where you want it to be shooting toward. So let's talk about a bit of recoil mitigation which I'm going to go and show you several builds and talk about how they mitigate recoil and how I got it working through. So the first one to go and show off is my Commander Soldier, and this is a Japanese gator build where the arm is connected on the top of the cockpit. It's a very safe build to go with since there's no spine included. The way that it mitigates the most recoil, even though it's fairly far away from the main connection point, is that it's right dab there in the middle. And it also helps with the firing order, because the way I have it set up, I had the first one shooting, so it pulls it up just a bit. I have the bottom one shooting, which pulls it back down a little bit, and then I have left and right, so it goes slightly that way and slightly that way, and that gives a pretty good accurate layout. So bam, 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 and bam. And of course, the barrels don't matter that much at the moment. Another good example would be my Commander Sniper, which these snipers are placed almost directly on the central connection point, which is right here. They're as close as they probably should ever get, because of their weakness on they're very easy to pop. You don't want your entire build to be connected to one of these, because one flamethrower could really wreck your day. So all these weapons are very accurate, and then these are pretty much the least accurate because they're the furthest away. But because I have a dark cockpit, the firing delay is so thin that the effects of recoil are practically nothing, especially because I only have 2 snipers per group. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I don't give it any time to throw off my aim. That's another easy way of dealing with recoil, is just have smaller weapon groups. In that way there's less effect of recoil throughout the entire grouping. The next one I want to talk about is this one. And as you can see, the weapons are fairly far away from each other. It is a howitzer build, so I can pretty much fire just this side of weapon groups and still have as close to pinpoint accuracy as I can possibly get, just because of the recoil delay. But if and when that ever gets removed, there's a certain order to it that gives you the optimum effect, which is having inside and then inside. Since this one's, I'm going to say, is a little bit higher than that, I want to go from the inside, which has the least amount of kick this way, to the inside that has a kick this way. And then I want to go same thing, this way and this way. And then group 2 is going to just be the opposite of that, of up, down, up, down. So the forces of this recoil is counterbalanced by this one, and that one counterbalanced by that one. And that's pretty much a good example of how that works. Let's see. Oh no. I want to go. There's another one I want to go and show off. Ah, this is a good one. And now this one, tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of rockets. Rockets everywhere. Now this is actually 16 rockets. Each weapon group is completely full. And there's not really much recoil mitigation at all in here. The way that I actually have the weapon group set up is everything as close as possible. So like this one, this one, and this one, this one should be one group. This one, this one, this one, and there's another one nearby. I can't remember which one it is. It's going to be one group. 1, 2, 3, 4 is going to be one group. And, oh, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then finally 1, 2, 3, 4. Something like that is going to be the grouping. So all of them are really close together So when I'm using the gun cams, I can have the gun cam of this one, and then everything's going to be close to it, instead of having me, it looks like I'm shooting straight, and this one's just flying out of nowhere. The next thing to talk about is just some general tips and tricks, which includes multiple gun cameras when given the possibility, and splitting up weapon groups. And the easiest way to go and show that, the first one where you have multiple gun cameras, would be something along the lines of let's see, this one right here, which I have only 4 weapons, and I have 4 groups. But I have all 4 weapons on another group. So you can see, like, this one would be something like this. So I have a gun camera down here and a gun camera up here. So if this one gets damaged to the point where I lose the gun camera, but it's still, you know, connecting the rest of them, I can use this gun camera instead. And if that one was barely damaged at all, I'll still have as good as accuracy as I ever had when this one was working. And then finally, the weapon splitting is best shown on this right here. And I have a large Rhino cockpit with 6 howitzers. And in my weapon grouping, I have the first group of all 6. I have a second group of just 2, this one and this one. And I have the third group of this one, and this one. In the first group, this one's the gun camera. So all my gun cameras are over here, so it's easier for me to aim instead of having a gun camera over here, then way over here, and being confused why this one, when firing, has shots coming from this side instead of this side. I'm actually going to go and deploy out and show little shameless advertisement from Recoil Industries or Incorporated. Oh, I need to go and change that name so it matches the Recoil Industries. Anyway, where's my controller? There it is. Sorry if this is a little long-winded, but it's easy to go and show off what it is, and I'll probably make a newer episode of this further down the line when I go and create the new versions of the overviews shameless plugin. So right here, you can see that this one's actually fairly accurate, but I want to go and do this. Fire those 2, fire those 2, and then I can just go and hold this down and just have 2, 2, 2. I can just split my weapons up, and I'll continually mess with that sniper's accuracy so they can't look easily directly at me to guarantee he can aim at a specific part. And I can do something like this as soon as they finish loading, where I could split it up into just 2 separate weapon groups instead of just 1. And I would generally want to go and put this about equal distances between each other, so as soon as one's half loaded, the other's firing. If I want, I could just wait a little bit and then fire all of them at once and really hit them with splash. This all depends on what you really want to do with it and how you want to do with it. Surprisingly enough, this is fairly accurate, which I guess because it's really close to the central connection point, because it's just 1 or 2 modules away. It's not that surprising, but still, I would have expected a little bit more kickback, and maybe if I had the weapons in front of the cockpit, that would be the case. But that should give you a pretty good idea of that. Weapon splitting is very good on things like snipers, where you might want to have the greater chance of hitting someone by firing 2 salvos in 10 seconds compared to just firing 1 and hoping that it hits. So like if someone's dodging a little bit, you could split up your fire and have a higher chance of hitting them just because you're throwing more shots out, even though they're doing a little bit less damage. And it's just a bunch of little things to think about. But really, I would say you should definitely don't like mix weapon groups, like weapon types. That just doesn't give you very much effectiveness. Like this cannon with this machine gun and like this machine gun just doesn't make a very nice group. Like what I would do with this AI build is I'd probably do something like this. Oh no, I don't want to. So I have all cannons right next to each other. I could move this down here, move this cannon right over here. Oh my god, stop it. Stop being a bugger. I could do something like that, so that these cannons are relatively close together. Right there. Relatively close together. All of them, if they fired straight, would hit this right on the nose, or that right on the nose, or that right on the nose. This is just a flamethrower that, I don't know, I just like spray like that, just spray all over, try to go and touch all his equipment with it. And these aren't really too close together. It doesn't have to be. And that's just because, like while I'm waiting for this to reload, I can just fire that and just plink down little bits of health. You could put everything on a single weapon group, but then if you're firing at long range, you lose this effectiveness. The only time that they would be effective having everything on a single group would be if you're point blank, and then also depending on what you're facing, if it's a very skinny build, this may hit, but that would be firing way off over there. Well, probably closer, like it'll be firing there while these are hitting right here, and it just won't be as effective. So definitely group with like items. Try to group in like places. For like this flamethrower, if I wanted to show off, like if I wanted to group it, I wouldn't care exactly where, as long as it stopped interfering with this goes, that goes. Like I could just group it like this. Just namby-pamby all over the place. They're not even in cohesion with each other, but I don't really care, because of the way that flamers work is I don't want to be 100% accurate, I just want to hit them with them. So I hope that helps. I'll definitely go and revisit this at a later date, especially when I get the recoil formula up and whatnot. But hopefully this has helped someone deal with recoil and weapon grouping.